Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. We'll be making this lovely design. It's an underbust corset, so exactly what you see here is what we'll be making. Let's get started. Now we have our shoulder line already, so from the shoulder line, that's my starting line. I'm going to be marking 7.5 inches. Then from there I'm going to mark 8 inches for our chest line, 10 inches for our breast point, 13.5 for our underbust, and 17.5 plus half inch sewing allowance, that is 18. So that is me repeating all the lines and drawing the lines. So I'm just trying to write them down so you guys will understand. On the bust, then the waist length. So on the chest line, I'm going to be repeating the same shoulder measurement. Then you're going to connect the lines together. Then from that point you come down for the shoulder slope by 1 inch. Then for the neckline, I'm using 4 inches. I'm going to change it later because the neck is actually very wide, so that is me connecting it. Then the depth also I use 3.5. now after connecting it, guys, you're going to connect to the shoulder slope. So whatever you have left from the slope to the chest line, you divide it by 2 and you get the midpoint. You're going to come in by half inch. Then on your chest line is where you put your round bust measurement. So the round bust divided by 4, that's where you put there. Then you're going to connect the line. Our round bust is 37, so divide by 4, we have 9.25. So after connecting it this way, the next thing is to get the nipple to nipple measurement. So for her it is 4 inches. So you put it from the breast point to the waist length and you connect the line. Now on the waistline, guys, I'm using 0.75 on both sides. That is for the dart intake. Now I'm going to connect it to the breast point. After connecting it like so, then I'm going to put the round waist measurement, since we already have our round bust measurement. Now our round waist is 31 divided by 4. Then I added back the dart intake of 1.5. Now the next thing is to bring in the bust dart technique. So I'm using 2 inches for her bust dart. Then I'm connecting it to the breast point. After this, guys, now because it is an under bust corset, so from the under bust I'm going to go down by half inch. I don't want the joining to be exactly on the under bust, so I went down by half inch. Then on the under bust line I went up by 1 inch. So I'm going to connect it to the first dart leg. So you take your curve ruler and you connect it just the way you see me doing, like that. After connecting it like that, then that is where we'll be cutting it from. So guys, I'm just adding the sewing allowance on the neckline, on the shoulder point. Then for the sewing allowance, I'm adding 1.5 inches, but I'm not going to cut it now. I think I'll be adding directly on the mesh. So I'm also adding half inch for the armhole allowance. Now in order for me to cut this properly, I want to close that bust dart, because if I cut it the other way, I will have shortage of fabric here. Can you see what I'm trying to say? There's a shortage there. So I'm just going to be filling it back like that. That is why I prefer to add the sewing allowance on the material. So after that, guys, I'm just going to connect exactly what it gave me here. So the next thing is to cut. I'm cutting from the under bust. Just watch how I cut. Cut from the under bust. Then I'm going to go to the neckline and cut. Now you can choose to make your neckline wide or not. It depends on what you are sewing. So that is me cutting the armhole and also cutting the side. Like I told you, I'll be adding the seam allowance on the fabric. Yeah, so you cut that, you separate it from the down part. So whatever we have left there, yeah, because we are not going to be cutting that off, we are going to be replacing it. We just minus it from the mesh. So now I don't want any joining at the for the main fabric, so I'm removing the darts for the down part, then also cutting the side. Now if you notice, if you did not label your pattern properly, you might get it wrong. So that is me labeling it up and down. Then for the other side, I just want to make sure that is where I'm adding the allowance. That's why I wrote sewing allowance. Now this is the center front as well, so this will be on the fabric, then the upper part will be on the mesh. Now like I told you, if you place them together, they are not the same, so the difference is just that. So guys, we finished drafting the front, let's draft the back. Now the back is going to be 16 inches because of that bust dart intake. So I mark 16 inches from the shoulder point all the way down. The next thing is to mark my chest line, the breast point, then the full length. After that, I'm just repeating the line so I can get a straight line. Now on the chest line, also repeat your shoulder measurements. Then you connect the line together. I'm just cutting off that excess. Okay guys, then shoulder slope of 1 inch as well. The same neck width used for the front, used for the back. Now I'm connecting it to the shoulder slope. Now guys, you can see there is no zip allowance because it is a lacing. The back is going to have eyelets. We are lacing it up. So you repeat the nipple to nipple measurement all the way to the chest line and you connect your line. So that is me connecting the line, and I'm going to put the round bust measurement also. Then you connect the lines together like that. Then on the waistline, I'm taking a half inch on both sides. On the chest line, I'm going to put in 0.25. Yeah, for tightening. I want to tighten the chest line. So you connect it to the half inch. After connecting that, we are going to put in the round waist measurement. Then you replace the 1 inch darts. Yeah. So for our lacing guys, for the waist, I use 1.5 there. On the chest line, I use 2.5 inches. I'm going to connect the 3 lines together. After connecting the first one, now I realized the waist is too small, so I extended it to 2 inches. So then you connect it to the waist. I'm going to add sewing allowance on this pattern because I have enough paper. So I added 1.5 inches. Then plus sewing allowance for the armhole, for the shoulder, then also for the lacing part. Don't mind me, use your own half inch, accurate half inch. Don't just use a free hand. Now we're going to be cutting off that part because that is going to be for the back yoke. Now I'm going to close the darts. I don't want to sew anything at that back, like I don't want to join any darts. So you're going to close it up like this. Close it up from the 0.25 to the 1 inch on the waistline and just blend it up inward to the yoke. After that, you can now cut off that part. So that becomes the mesh. Now I'm cutting from the side, also cutting the half inch that I added. So that becomes the side back and That's the up and that's the down. I'm also cutting the mesh for the upper bodice. Now you cut the armhole. So we have our back pattern ready. So this is me using my tape to close it so it doesn't open. Now guys, we have our front, our back. Now for the front, we are also going to close the dart as well, the underbust. After closing it, you realize it's not the same. Remember, we have excess for the dart, so I'm just removing it. So this is our front and this is our back. So the upper part will be for the mesh. Now I'm closing the dart for you to see that it is the same thing, just matching them together. The difference there is the ½ inch, so we'll be adding ½ inch to the back as well, so it can be the same. Now let's cut it on the fabric. So guys, because I don't want a shoulder joining for my yoke, now this is the mesh I'm using, this original mesh, 1 yard. I'm going to close the shoulder of the pattern paper together. Now we have ½ inch for joining, so just close the ½ inch that way. Then you make sure the center front is on a straight line. It is on a straight line. After closing, we'll be cutting it on the mesh. Now this mesh is folded into 4 because I like doubling my mesh. I don't want to take chances. You can do single, but it is better when you fold it into 4. So for that part, I'm adding ½ inch sewing allowance, like I told you. Then I'm cutting exact on the armhole. Now I told you I will be adding the allowance on the mesh itself, so I'm adding 1½ inches that way. Then that is me cutting it off. I also added allowance to that part. So we are done cutting the mesh. Now for the armhole point there, notch it so that you will know where you're going to attach your sleeve. You know how to attach your sleeve. You won't get confused. Also for the bust dart, I'm also going to notch from the bust dart the 2 inches, notch on both sides. Just watch what I do. Notch like that. Yeah. Then because we'll be sewing it to the breast points, I'm going to use a pin to hold it down there, and I will take my pen marker pen, yeah, and just indicate it that way because it is black, so that when I'm sewing I will know where I am stopping. I hope you understand what I mean. So guys, we are done cutting the mesh and this is what we have. This is what we have. Now for the back and the down parts, the remaining part of the upper bodice, I've cut it on the lace and on the lining. I cut on the lace and the lining. So means I just want to show you a sneak peek into what we are doing. So this is how it is. So guys, kindly stay tuned for the next video. The sewing tutorial is very important. If you find this tutorial helpful, kindly give me a like. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.